Welcome to the Stream It Sports 2017 Football Coaches Preview Show. Today we feature Coach Eric Rice from the Fort Collins Lambkins. Good to see you, Coach. We've got David Haase here with me, and we're going to talk a little bit about Lambkin football for 2017.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Let's just go ahead and talk about your history as a coach at Fort Collins High School. We've already chatted about that, but you can go ahead and do a little bit more for us.
So this is year 15 now, which, like we were just talking about, is shocking to me because, time just flies.
Because you're only 28.
Right. Time just flies by so fast. And, you look back at kids and as we were just talking earlier, when did you graduate 2 years ago? And they go, no, it's like 10 or 12. I'm like, wow, where did the time go? But it goes by fast. But the great thing is, even at year 15, I feel as passionately about coaching our kids as I did when I was just turning 30. So, the passion and the drive is still there for me. And, my assistants are the same way. But, we just love Fort Collins High School. I've got a wonderful wife who, graduated from Fort Collins High School, and she coaches track there and teaches alongside of me. So we really have a pretty unique situation where our kids have grown up in Fort Collins High School. They're there with me all the time. My office looks like a playroom for kids. When I have college coaches in, they kind of look down at the floor and they see all the toys and the bikes and the scooters and things like that. But we kind of live there, and so we love being at the school. My wife loves it. She coaches track, ran track there. A 2-time state champion in the 400, and we just love being at Fort Collins. And so year 15, it doesn't feel like maybe some other coaches you may talk to like, it's year 15. It's like, yeah, it's year 15, and they still want me to be there. So we're excited about it, and we're happy that Fort Collins High School still wants us to be there, and we just love coaching at the school.
That's good. Tell us a little bit, just briefly, about last year. Just and probably would be briefly, because you're not used to having years like that. You've had a very successful.
You're
campaign.
right. You ride the ups and downs in high school football, and some years you're thin, and some years you're flush. And the sad thing about last year is we were in a lot of games, and we just couldn't find ways to finish them. A good example was. Loveland was just a fantastic football team, which you can talk about what happened to them last year in a different segment. But at a 9-1, they were one of the best teams that we played, and up until the fourth quarter, it was a 7-point game, and then we just had one bad thing happen to us. We snapped the ball over the punter's head, and now it becomes a 9-point game, and that changed the whole dynamics of that. But we were playing right with a team that probably on paper was better than us, and we saw our kids overachieving. Greeley West, goodness gracious, we couldn't do anything right in the first half, and the large part of the second half, but then we kept clawing back, and again, we lost by 6 points, and again, it's still a loss, but you saw some positives, there, even though you weren't winning all the games, and maybe you're used to winning, but you saw the effort that was there, and that's one of the things that we tell our kids all the time, that if the effort's there, we can live with the result if you're giving it everything you've got. We're trying to play that into our favor that, hey, maybe teams might look past us a little bit this year. Hey, you're that 2-8 team last year that wasn't very good, and let's use that negative that was last year's record as a motivator for this year to get out of that. Yeah.
Well, and then going into that, talk a little bit about this year, like on the offensive side. Who do you have coming back? Who's going to be running this show on the offensive side?
So in terms of guys that are coming back, obviously Coach Tarver does a great job, but we've got Jake Leone at tight end, and last year Jake's numbers were just out of this world.
Yeah, he's definitely a weapon.
And he was, and I'm not a Max Preps guy, but Coach Tarver is. And Coach Tarver, we had a class together last year that we taught, and he'd sit there, hey, look where Jake is on Max Preps. And I'm like, wow, he's that highly rated, he's that highly ranked. He finished top 20 in maybe it was receptions or yards. I need to get Coach Tarver in here to help me with stuff like that. But he was one of the top-rated tight ends in the country last year, and he actually got an invite to go down to Jerry's World down there in Dallas to play at one of those Nike combine type things. Yep. And he went down there and did really well. And what was good for him is I kind of said, hey, wait till you go down there, man. You see some of the men that you're that are playing at your level right now. Wait till you see what they look like. And so that was good to him, for him to be able to go down there and compete and see what outside talent in Louisiana and Texas and Mississippi and places like that look like. So, and then on top of that, we've got Jackson Shore, who Jackson had a good year last year receiving, and Jackson is a 6'3", 170-pound kid who can jump out of the gym, which surely helps. And so we've got a couple good tall targets to throw the ball to, which helps a young sophomore quarterback. Hayden Iverson will be our quarterback this year, and he's just a sophomore. But I'll tell you what, last year he impressed us. He just has a strange ability to extend plays. And you talk about composure, man. Nothing really rattles him, man. We had a 7-on-7 this year. We were actually playing Lane Wassinger's team down there at Roosevelt, because Lane was on my staff a couple years ago, and he'd had just kind of a rotten day, thrown 3 picks, but you wouldn't know it. I mean, he wasn't all frazzled. He wasn't down on himself. He wasn't, kicking the ground. He kept his chin up and kept working. And sure enough, we were able to win that 7-on-7. I know 7-on-7, it is what it is, but we were able to win that 7-on-7 against those guys. And it took him kind of putting a final drive together for us to do that. The other strength for us on offense is probably the biggest offensive line that I've ever had. We've got a 6'3", 320-pound kid who, Quay McLeany is his name, and he's been offered by Carroll College up in Montana, which is really, really neat. And if anyone knows their history on Carroll College, they've won 6 or 7 national titles in the last 15 or 16 years of Van Dee's career up there. So, a high-level program at the NAIA level. And then we've got another guy, Jonathan Engel. He's been offered by Western State. He goes on the other side at left tackle, 6'2", 250. So we've got a big line, and so what we're hoping out of those guys is that they can use their strength and their size and their power, to maybe get hands on some people and control the line of scrimmage and maybe take some of the pressure off a sophomore quarterback and be able to run the ball effectively. So, we've got some weapons this year, but right now, I guess if you were to rate us and you say, well, they've got a lot of potential, and you and I both know potential can be a really dirty word in anything that you do. Well, you have the potential to be great, but can you be great? So, we're trying to realize that potential this year on the offensive side of the ball.
Now you go back with those same big kids, and like most coaches, you'd like to play one way, but if you got to have kids going both ways, let's go to that defensive side. Will some of those kids join some of your other defensive returners from last year?
Some. We try to limit that number, but I'll tell you what, you brought up something that's really interesting because after we had our scrimmage this summer against Mark's team over there at Rocky, we had given up a couple plays, a couple long touchdown runs just on his veer option play. And man, it really, really bothered me. And so what I did is I went back to probably the year we ever played the option the best was against Columbine. And you never know it because we lost in the semifinals to Columbine. We were 12-0, and that was the only game we lost all year. But we played their option really well. So I started looking at what we did. I was just kind of looking more for my knowledge. I'm like, man, what did we do to stop that so well? Well, I started noticing, I'm like, man, I didn't realize Columbine, with the numbers that they had on that team, most of their kids were playing both ways. And we're talking about Ryan Miller, who played in the pros and was a 4-star recruit for CU, and the Cunningham kid that went on to CU as well. I mean, their quarterback was playing free safety, and so I'm like, they clearly have made a statement that, hey, we're going to play our best kids regardless of whether they got to play both ways or it's one way. And so we started to kind of look at that this summer. And one of the things that, interestingly enough, happened as we moved through the summer, we found out that Jackson Shore was a really, really good defensive back as well. And that kind of came to a head when we had, again, another 7-on-7. We going down to play Frank's team down at Horizon. And in 3 plays, he had 3 interceptions. And you could just kind of see that savvy, that knowledge that, hey, I know how to run routes, so I kind of know where to be because I run these routes, and so I know how things are working together. And so we're like, and you need to start at strong safety because he's got a little moxie to him too. He kind of likes to mix it up. What's your strong safety? I go back to greats that we had like Zach Donaldson, who I don't know if we've ever had a strong safety before or since like him. Maybe his dad, but outside of that, I don't know if we've ever had a strong safety as good as him and as aggressive as him. But Jackson is starting to show me some of those same types of characteristics that Zach had.
And be the kind of kid, you've always had those press coverage kids. You like to have a lot of people across the line of scrimmage, and you challenge offenses. You
are right. And we kind of got away from that last year, and so we're going to try to get back to that this year because that's always been our MO at Fort Collins. Hey, we're going to bring pressure, we're going to blitz you, and beat us doing it. It's it's kind of like the double-edged sword. You're either going to win by it or you're going to fall on it, one way or the other. But he gives us the ability to do that and do some different things with him too. We've added some different stuff this year where we put him at a free safety look in the middle of the field and let him go because he's sideline to sideline good. So some kids will play both ways. We don't know how many yet. We told them today, hey, every job is open right now. Every job is up for grabs. You got to earn it, dude. We're just not giving jobs away because you're a senior or you started last year. I said last year doesn't matter. You have to earn it for this year. So, we'll kind of see. But right now, Jackson for sure. Jonathan Engel has really, really good football IQ. I've never seen an offensive lineman know everybody's job on the offensive side of the ball, where he's telling receivers what routes to run. And those receivers don't really like that when he does that, but he's able to do it. So we saw that as well, and we're like, hey, he needs to maybe play a little bit more defense for us because when we talk about the specialized techniques that defensive linemen has on our in the scheme of what we do, he gets it, he understands it, and he's able to go out and execute. So there's definitely a handful of kids that probably have to play both ways, but obviously the ideal scenario for any coach is to have your defensive group and your offensive group, and that way when that series is over, you're able to sit there, talk to them, make adjustments, and let them rest, and then go out there for their 5 or 6 or 12 plays or whatever it's going to be, and they're rested and they're ready to go. So that's the ideal scenario, but a few kids will probably have to play both ways, yeah.
And we've had plenty of times on Stream of Sports here in town, you've got guys on special teams that have made plays for you over the years, and from returners to kickers, punters, everybody on both sides of that, that third of the game that we all talk about, but you got to be good at it. And who do you think is going to be the people in place for you this year?
Well, we've got a lot of open spots there as well, but we found a couple kids that have come in and kicked the ball and punted well, and you talk about that being a third of the game. We consider that the first third of the game. We start every time we have camp. Our first practice is a special teams only practice because we've placed so much emphasis on that's where momentum swinging plays in games happen are on special teams, and that can either drain you or recharge you one way or the other. And so Spencer Purnell has come in last year. He spent most of the year as a junior with an ankle injury. Then he didn't play, I would say, maybe the last 6 games of the year. He's come in and he started punting. Like, wow, man, great leg. And so we're trying to figure out what's the best way for us to punt with him. Does he need to be kind of a rugby guy? Is he more of a straight-on guy? We're trying to work that out. Garrett McGraw, who's going to be a senior, is a good kicker, got a great leg. And we've seen some good stuff out of him. But what's unique about what we do on special team is that's actually one of our major awards at the end of the year, is what we call our Special Teams Player of the Year. And so we try to reward that throughout the season with, hey, you make a great play on special teams. Here's a shirt that only you can only get by making a special teams play that you get to wear under your pads on game day that the average Joe on offense or defense doesn't get to have. So we see kids really buying in, going, hey, this is my chance to make an impact in the game. That it's not just, oh, I'm on special teams. We consider it the other way around. That, hey, you're on special teams, and we consider you a special player to put you in this situation. And when you do that as well, you got to have some fun things that kids can do too. And I know you guys know. I've heard you talk about it before. Our
third
reputation
good to seat,
with,
and I can still see third good to seat on fourth down in the old goal line.
And I was thinking of that
man.
play, and I remember, when people came to interview me after that game, I'm like, well, what'd you do on that play? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't see it because I was talking to the defense. It was something that we work on offense. We have some things like that, but the other thing, we like to onside kick when the opportunity's there, and everybody knows that. It's no secret now.
Yep.
But kids get excited about practicing that stuff, and then when you have like 18 different onside kicks like we tend to have,
and the kids buy in.
it becomes fun for them, and then
Well, it's fun to watch as a fan, actually. I mean,
you're right.
It's fun for us when we broadcast. We
Can't
call
look
you the
away.
gunslinger. We said,
Yeah.
we don't know what in the heck Coach Rice is going to do here.
And again, it all goes back to, maybe, I can't remember the year, but it was when we played Mullen, and our JV team is getting ready to play Mullen, and they just beaten us the night before in the playoffs. And it was then when you had that, the JV came up the next day and they played the game, and we didn't have a kicker that could kick it past the 30-yard line. I go, Coach, just onside kick every play. What the heck? Who cares? And sure enough, we started getting them. I'm like, maybe we're onto something here. I'm not as dumb as I look sometimes. So we kind of adopted that. And again, now you got kids coming, hey, Coach, can we run that one onside kick that we? And I'm like, that's a good idea, and then they're starting to make you look like a good coach because they suggested it. So you guys might be up there giving credit to me, where a kid came to me and goes, hey, Coach, I think we can run this because I saw this kid doing that, and they're starting to pay more attention on the special team side of things because it is, again, that ability to make a huge play and really swing the game in your favor.
So talk a little bit about the conference. I know we had a realignment. You all went to 4A in football.
Yeah.
All kinds of things have happened the last couple of years. Just briefly tell us about your thoughts on some of that and where you see yourself fitting into the conference this year.
So last year, again, there was a reshuffle. The first 2 years that we were in 4A, we were still in the Northern Conference, but we had Windsor and Longmont and Loveland and those guys. They were in that what they call it, the Longs Peak or whatever it's called. And so I start to lose track of all the names of the conferences these days. But and so our biggest competitor in those first 2 years was Broomfield, which we were able to go back-to-back years, go down there, win a conference title, and they came up to us, and then we were able to win it again. And that was in 2015. That was a year that we started off 1-3. So
Right.
that was a really great rebound for us that year. So when they realigned, then they put Windsor's in our league right now, and so obviously they're the top dog in our league, and they won it last year, and rightfully so. I mean, Chris Jones does a wonderful job with those guys, and they just buy into everything that he does. And
he
on
didn't
top
even
of that,
coach last year.
I know,
And
right?
he just took a year off, and now
I
he's
know.
coming back.
When they were hiring for that job, I'm like, anybody but Chris, anybody but Chris. But don't get me wrong, Chris and I have a great relationship, but I love him to death. But I'm like, dang it, he got the job again. I'm like, shoot, I got to coach against that guy. He's just so good at what he does, and his kids are so disciplined, and they're so aggressive, and they play so hard that anytime you play a team like that, you know what you're in for. That's your pack your lunch game and be prepared for an all-out war.
We've got that on Stream at Sports this year.
It's going to be a good game here in French Field.
Well, I hope so, because last year when we went down there, and that was at that point in time, we knew, our kids knew there was nothing we could do to get in the playoffs. There's no hope left for us, and it kind of felt that, and maybe that was my fault because maybe we talked about it a little too much. That playing for pride, and we didn't play for pride at all down there, and they just really kind of ran over us. So other teams, you talk about top dogs in our conference, you talk about Monarch. They can never leave the conversation because they have 4A state championships under their belt, and again, what they do over there is. He invented that offense down there. So that phone booth offense that we call it, they just grind on you all game. I mean, that's tough. And so we know we're in for some super physical battles in our conference right there. And then one more, that was maybe kind of an upstart last year. And I don't know if you'd call that an upstart, but man, Skyline was just out of this world last year when they came to play us. Holy cow, they had some kids, and I was like, man, where'd all these kids come from? And man, and they took it to us. They took us to the woodshed and pounded us, and we kept trying to come back during that game, but it was never enough, and they kept making play after play after play. So you've seen the level of our conference rise up in terms of the competitive level of all the teams in it, and we just hope to be in the mix, at the end right there. And so, but we definitely feel that being in 4A is the right spot for us because of the numbers of our school. The numbers that we get out for football, we're definitely in the right spot. But I would tell you at any given day, most 4A teams that are at that elite level, like a Loveland, like a Greeley West, like a Longmont, like Windsor, could go in against most 5A football teams and not just play with them, but have a really, really good chance of winning. And I would think most 5A coaches would probably sit there and tell you, I don't want to play Windsor. No. I don't want to play Longmont. We know their MO over the years. And I would hope that on a good year, most teams would say that they didn't want to play us either because, that they knew we were going to compete with them and have every bit of a chance to beat them as any other 5A opponent they might play. So, a lot of times.
We may or may not have said that in a broadcast a couple of years ago when you all were.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think if I was a 5A team, I would not want to have to come down here and play you guys.
Yeah. So, but what's funny about that is I have a unique perspective on how 5A teams or really just teams in Denver view teams north. And south, because when I was at Green Mountain, I'll share an interesting story here because we used to scout Arvada West. It was one of the games on our 2-year schedule there, and they had played Fort Collins right before we played them, and I'm like, dude, we'll kill Fort Collins, man. We'll beat those guys. And it was that arrogance that, we're a Denver school, we're a city school, we're a metro area school. We're just better than you just because we showed up. Well, I think people are kind of starting to figure out that's not the case anymore. The talent has extended north. It's extended south. I mean, shoot, we've seen that from Pueblo East, who's run the 3A state championship 3 years in a row now. So there's talent all in Pine Creek down south there in Colorado Springs. Obviously, I mean, you'd be remiss not to talk about them. So there's talent all over the place, and but I still share that story with our kids that there is still, I think maybe, whether it's unspoken or not, that there's maybe from that arrogance from that Denver area kid or maybe the parent of the kid that, they're one of those North schools. They're not very good. And so we try to use that when we go to play those teams because, like I said, that was kind of my attitude. I'm like, well, we're a Denver school. We'll beat Fort Collins any day of the week. I'm like, shoot, we should put them on our schedule. And then, of course, Arvada West would hammer us just like they hammered them. And so it's like, maybe we're not as good as we thought we were. So help you take a step back and get over yourself a little bit.
Right.
Well, let's take it off the field then for a second.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, you've had your program in place. You talk about your longevity there and the kids that come back and you see later. What are the things that you want to provide these kids, that they get from the team experience but not from so much on the field?
I'm sure most coaches would sit here and tell you this now, but early on in my career, I probably wouldn't have said it. I was so, football, but you're really teaching kids how to live their life is what you're doing. We try to tie in life lessons all the time. What I need you to do is take this same approach into the classroom or with a job or maybe being a father or a husband someday, and be a great communicator, be someone that's accountable, be someone that's reliable. And even if you can't make it, let somebody know. I said, look, how do you get ahead in your classes in school? Talk to your teachers. If you're going to miss, let them know. I said, when you communicate like that, you get the benefit of the doubt now. You get that teacher say, hey, this is a kid that cares. And, again, I said, look, this doesn't have anything to do with football. This has everything to do with the more important parts of your life, which are school, working someday, and being a father or a husband at some point in time. And those are things that you need to be good at. You need to be good at life. But that's what's wonderful about football and sports in general, is that they teach you those things. They really kind of start to define your character of what kind of man or woman you're going to become someday. And that kind of fits into our two very simple team rules that we have is, 1, do what's right, 2, be a good person. And usually those are pretty simple answers. When you, hey, did you do something right or did you do something wrong? It's easy to answer that. And then usually the next time is, if you did something wrong, were you being a good person at the same time? Usually the answer is no. So those are simple things. I'm not a big, hey, I've got a rule for this, and this. Right. Those 2 simple rules tend to kind of extend everything, whether it be school, maybe outside in the community. Obviously on your football team, those rules apply. You have to understand what you're charged with when you're understanding your responsibilities as head coaches. It extends more than just the sport that you're coaching. It extends on how to teach them how to grow up and how to become the man or woman that you want them to be, that society wants them to be.
I would say that as we've watched your teams figure it out, is a lot of times you can see that on the field at times.
We're going to use that.
Yeah, because that is, you, of all the teams we watch, you're the most unpredictable, of your team.
Right.
But it's a fun unpredictable, because it's like, these guys are having fun.
Well.
They're trying to do these things. So anyway, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
For David Haase, Randy McCoy, this is Coach Rice, and we'll see you next time.